Welcome to Mystic Detectives. I am one of your hosts, Crystal Miller.
And I'm your other host, Andrea Marziano. Hey, Crystal, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am very well, thank you for asking. Any exciting going on for you lately?
Oh, yeah, super exciting. I went and bought a secondhand mattress today for Torin. Woohoo!
Wow, living the dream.
I know,
I'm
right?
sure I'm sure Torn will be grateful though, because it's not a lot of fun to have a mattress that is needing replaced for any reason, really.
Well, in Torin's case, it's because the mattress is shorter than they are tall.
Well, cut off the feet. They don't need a new mattress. Just shorten the feet or shorten the hair,
Shorten the hair.
maybe.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, and actually, big hair brings me into an event I went to
Oh,
sometime
yeah,
around the
that's
time
funny.
that people will hear this recording. Um, and it was called Hair Fest. And it was actually kind of a play on words because it was Hare instead of Hair, but it was the hair type bands.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it was cover bands, of course.
Uh-huh.
And there was everything from Motley Crue to Pat Benatar to Foreigner and Journey and things like that. And
Nice.
it was in a location near Portland at a big arena, sort of the fairground place
Hmm.
where they had all kinds of different things. So there was lots of lovely dirt, and we got to all enjoy that and
Uh-huh.
camping. And it was 3 days. And I know you know about me that I don't prefer to be dirty,
Yeah, I
but I will
forgot that
be
you
dirty.
camped. Yeah.
Yeah, I will be dirty if necessary, but I also brought the equipment to wash because that's really important to me.
Uh-huh.
And so that was good, but it was super fun. And watching the people in my age range and mostly older, some younger. I
Interesting.
know I sent you a picture that about the crowd, and it was an early on picture. And of course, your mark was, oh, great audience. But actually, it really was a great audience.
There were
It was,
like 20 people standing in front of a
I know,
stage in this
I
picture.
know. It was just I know. It was just beginning and I just, anyway, but lots and lots of people were there. We danced. Some people danced the whole time. I didn't. I was really just enjoying the vibe of it. And I enjoyed that every group actually was good. Some were really, really good. Some were a little less good, but they were all enjoyable to listen to because sometimes, especially because it was a 3-day event, it
Hmm.
can be difficult to find musicians of quality in that number.
Hmm.
And one of the guys was a participant in, I think, 4 different bands of completely different genres. And
Oh.
he was amazing. And I feel like it takes, I'm not a musician except for my sound baths, which is not the same thing. And he just, I feel like I'm saying "and" a lot, but he was really, really amazing just going through the different types of bands. So I feel like that's huge
That's
talent right
cool.
there. And I found out that he's a high school music teacher on his other
Fun.
gigs. Yeah, so a lot of them can be that way. I talked to a couple of people that was their full-time gig, is just playing music all around the country.
Hmm.
So they're just approaching it differently, but it's a lot of fun. I had a really good time.
Sounds like a lot of fun. I'm a child of the 80s and early 90s hair bands like Def Leppard and Poison and
Hmm.
Molly Crew and Skid
Hmm.
Row and you name it, right? So I'm sure I would have a blast.
Well, then you get to come next year. They already have the dates. They already
Oh,
have the dates. Yeah. And it was not totally inexpensive, but it was for a weekend, a 3-day event, it was about $450.
okay.
And so I feel like that's quite reasonable because that included the camping space
Hmm.
and the whole every access to the show. There were of course VIP passes, which I did not get, and I didn't need them. So that was all fine and dandy.
That's funny.
Yeah. Oh well. It could have gotten some better swag, I guess, but I don't really worry much about that. I did get
That's funny.
given a T-shirt. Woohoo! Free
Woohoo!
T-shirt. It was a very
Nice.
pretty T-shirt, and it had an outline of a hair and
Ah, yes.
all and tie dye. So there I was. So
There you
anyway, but
go.
yeah. However, I wanted to let you know that music actually can sort of lead into our topic for today.
Yes, it can. Because I
Just
was when we were talking before we started recording, shut up. When we were talking before we started recording, I said, you can talk about, or we can talk about how music can be chanting. And Andrea said, nope, wrong.
okay. Let the listeners know that's not exactly how the conversation went. And it is about chanting. This is true. As I was doing some research about chanting, there were some people that were saying that chanting is actually the same as music. However, my research showed that it is not exactly the same because music is using the voice in multiple ways at
Hmm.
the same time. So you'll go up and down and have different notes and variations and stuff like that. Chanting, however, is usually the same thing over and over and over again.
Uh-huh.
So it is not a whole variation, it's a particular sound. Now they may take one sound and then move to another, but it's repeated for
You want to hear a fun?
usually.
Do you want to?
Go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. Please finish.
I was just going to say the chanting is usually for a specific purpose. And so they will use specific words or sounds to accomplish that purpose. Now, what were you
Okay.
going to say?
Well, I was going to say, you want to hear a funny story about how I was introduced to chanting?
I
My
do.
very first introduction to chanting was, I'm going to do it for the audience, and then um, I'll tell you where it was from, but and maybe you'll know, Andrea, but it was
I do.
Nam Myoho Kikyo, Nam Myoho Kikyo. You know where that might have been introduced to me?
I believe I do, but do share.
It was the monkeys. The TV show. They had an
Oh, that's
episode where
funny.
for some reason they were chanting that. And I had no idea what they were saying or why they were doing it, but I was like, it's stuck in my head. And I know that's actually a real traditional chant. I looked it up decades ago. I can't remember what it is anymore. But yeah, that was my true first introduction. So I was probably 12 or 13, maybe even 11, 12 or 13. And y'all, I'm not old enough to be an original monkster, but I caught all the reruns and in the 80s. So that I was my sister and I were huge Monkeys fans. So
Well,
that
if it's any
yes.
consolation, the monkeys, when, because we're 10 years apart, listeners, in case we've never said that before, that you remember. Uh, but when I was a child, I listened to the monkeys and I actually thought they were live. However, they were not. Like many of the things I listened to as a child or saw on TV, I thought, oh, this is a new show. They were not. I just didn't realize it. So I thought the monkeys
Yes.
were a cool new trend, but they were not when even when I was a child, way back in the day. Anyway, for our topic, chanting has been a thing that almost every culture has some sort of a chanting. And it's been a really big part of different cultures for spiritual traditions. For some chantings will actually be calls to war. There'll be calls to cheer someone on, things like that. Most chanting, then, though, is done to do a soothing sort of thing. Most of us, I think, have probably heard of the Om chant, which is
Sure.
based in the Hindu religion, and the Georgian chants that the monks do. And that's a Christian thing. And
That just made me think of
listen,
something else funny, which is I believe it. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I believe it is. Oh gosh, why can't I think of what it is now? It's anyway. I can't remember. I don't think it's Monty Python. I think it's the
I
other
actually
guy.
there was no,
But
I think there
with
was a
the
part.
is it Monty Python with the
I feel like it
monks
was.
chanting where they're like
Hmm.
chant, 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 and then hit their heads with a board? Is that Monty
I think
Python?
so. I think so. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
hilarious.
that's what that monks chanting. That's what makes me. I don't have a very I don't have a very spiritual experience of chanting.
So it seems. And that's the thing though that is cool because even though you may not associate it with spiritual things, you've remembered these things for many,
That's
many,
true.
many years. So it makes an impact one way or another. And for you, it's mostly sort of funny experiences because I do remember that. And I think it's Monty Python. And listeners, if we're wrong, please let us know. Otherwise, we don't pretend now at or any time to be professional chanters. So we could be leading you astray. So many things we
or
don't
movie
pretend to
critics.
be. Well, we are professional. No, we aren't. But we think we should be, for heaven's sakes.
Yes.
But chanting has been used for eons of time for connecting with divine or to find inner peace and to experience just a whole host of things. And before we started the podcast today, I was listening to a chant, which I'm planning to link into our notes when this comes out. And just listening to this particular one, and we'll talk more about this, but it was set up to uh, coordinate with the different energy centers or chakras, which we've talked about before. And the idea behind it is to do each center to clear and go on and further through all the chakras. And it was really soothing. It was almost hypnotic. So I find that when I've listened to chanting, and sometimes when I do massage, I'll use some chants. Some of them are a little too vigorous, but
Yeah.
many of them, it's hard to tell sometimes that it's actual voices. It sounds more like an instrument, especially the Georgian chants that the monks do. To me, it sounds, I've heard some that sounded like even flutes
Mhm.
going on. And the first time I heard it, I did not realize it was human voices. And so I thought that was fascinating.
That is fascinating. I
But
agree.
so you've had those experiences with chanting, which were sort of funny. But there's also a lot of physical and psychological benefits, which we'll talk about later. And there have been some studies to show that this does provide benefits for people.
Mhm.
But one of the things they talk about is chanting can potentially improve your life because it's been known to have calming and stress relieving effects. Now, we recently did a recording on breath work, and I feel like this may fall into that sort of category. This takes a certain type of breath to be able to chant, especially continuously. And one of the ways that they do, especially I know for with the monks, is they have so many people that when somebody stops to take a breath, other people are still going.
Mhm.
And I've been in different events where we did the Om, and there were enough of us that there was never a lull. It was always continuous, even though some of us obviously had to stop to breathe at different intervals because passing out during a chant doesn't work as well. But have you ever been in a group where you did a chant?
Oh, I'm sure I have.
Do you remember anything about that?
I'm trying to remember, but I don't at the moment know
Hmm.
um, anything. It's funny. I promise I am absolutely taking this podcast seriously. But again, when I think about chants, what comes to my mind is light as a feather, stiff as a board. Light as a feather,
Hmm.
stiff as a board. Light as a So I've been participated in that kind of chanting.
Hmm.
Scaring myself as a child with my besties. Um, I have definitely done the Om. I've done it with drums, not drums. Sorry, with singing bowls and without. And yeah, I just don't have a lot of experience with it, I guess,
Hmm.
because there's not really anything I can think of other than what I just shared.
I got you. Well, when you do, I don't know if you remember this part, but when you were doing it with a singing bowl, did you try to match the pitch of the bowl or did you have your own pitch?
I tried to do both. I tried to match it and then I tried to resonate with it in a harmony
Hmm.
because I
Hmm.
think that's fun.
Yeah, I think for me it'd be easier to resonate than to match it.
Yeah.
Not, I can hear tones and I can hear things, but if someone says sing a C, I'd be like, C. I wouldn't, I mean, I wouldn't get anywhere near the note because I
Yeah.
just don't have that kind of background. And I know
I
you
don't
do.
have
We've
that.
talked, well, you
I
do singing,
like yeah, but you can't say sing a C. I could guess. I mean, I might be closer than you would be because
probably.
I can think of a piano, right? And if you start at middle C, I'm guessing it would be like boom, boom, nope, boom. No, hold on. Boom. That would be my guess.
Hmm. Yeah, and that sounds pretty close from what I've heard of C. So you definitely would do better than I because I couldn't even get to that point. So, but chanting, one of the things that's nice about chanting, I feel like, at least the times I've done it, is that when I've done it alone. So of course I can be wherever I want on the tune pitch
Uh-huh.
pitchfork, whatever it takes. But when in a group, I have found that I've been able to match the group, even if I couldn't have done it by myself. So the times that I've done chanting, and especially the oming, I felt a really strong sense of peace and connection to the group that I was with. And I felt like it was a purpose of just bringing ourselves into sort of a, I don't know, want to, just a peaceful space, just a connected, peaceful space. And I know when I did it, I still felt like the sound was going even when we stopped. And
Uh-huh.
when the person I was with, the people I was with, there was someone who started and stopped us. And when it stopped, I could practically see the notes swirling. It was really a really fun experience when I've done it. And I just, as I was looking at this chanting information, it's another thing that I thought, oh, I should do that all the time because it's good for me. However, I I haven't been able to incorporate every single thing I've ever heard of being good for me in my life every day. And as we've talked to a few of our guests, it's like, well, this tool works for me today, this works tomorrow, and maybe next month I'll do this one. And
Mhm.
I don't get that it's exactly it has to be this tool for this result,
Sure.
but this tool can assist this result. So basically, again, as we've talked about, chanting is just the practice of repeating specific words, phrases, or sound in a rhythmic, melodic, and also usually meditative manner. And I was I was reading one part of this, and somebody was they were talking about how great they felt after chanting for like 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
And there's no way I can't even I can't even think of doing that for 3 hours just to stay focused enough to do that.
There's a documentary, I think it's on Hulu, I'm not sure, it's called The Program.
Hmm.
Funny story about that, Sienna texted me and said, "You have to watch the program on Hulu," or whatever is on, and I sat and I was like, "Okay, what program?" Till I realized it was the program called The Program.
Who's
Anyway,
on
they have
second?
actually
Okay.
yeah, exactly, they actually have a disciplinary chant. I'm gonna get it wrong probably, but it was fascinating for me because they would have to do this for hours on end, and it
Mm.
was, let's see if I can remember. I was not in this school, so I just was learning it from them. But I've had similar things to this, but this one was like palms up, palms down, palms together, palms to the right, palm to the left, something like that. But they had to do it fast. Also, it was like palms up, palms down, left, right, whatever. And I thought that is such a treacherous slash clever way to occupy their minds, to just fill up all of their mental space.
Hmm.
And so I can see how when you're doing it for good, it's kind of the same situation, right? Like you can fill up all of your space with affirmations or peace or whatever it is that you're seeking. So
So are you indicating that they said those actual words, palms up,
yes,
palms down?
yes.
Okay. And so by doing that, the idea
So they had to
was
do it with the hand motions, though. It was,
right.
I mean, watch the program on, I think, Hulu, and
But
you'll
what
see. But
program? No, just kidding. Um, so the idea was this was a discipline though,
uh-huh,
and maybe that this chanting would take the space of ideas of harming others or self-harm or something
sure,
like that. There's just not
sure,
room in the brain for that. I get
sure,
you. That's
yeah. But
yeah.
if you
And
think about the flip side of that, I think it could serve the same purpose for being kind or
mhm.
um, forgiving or whatever the case may be. If you're looking to really like saturate yourself in that, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, and it in my research it talked about how these repetitions can take the form of a prayer even
Hmm.
because some people I know that there's been times where well for instance when I was doing CPR one time I kept thinking and I kept actually saying come on baby, come on baby, come on baby, come on baby,
Hmm.
and I kept saying that to myself and and but actually out loud, which was when I thought back later, I thought, why was I saying that? I mean, I wanted the baby to respond, and
Sure.
you know, it's our granddaughter, and that was actually on my mind today because today was the day that
Yes.
that happened.
It's Rainbow Baby
Um,
Day.
yeah, rainbow baby. And I thought to myself when I was researching this chanting that that probably assisted me to stay focused. And of course, while I was doing the breath, I didn't say it, but I was come on baby the whole time. And just looking back at it, I thought, oh, that felt really strange, but I couldn't stop. I kept trying to stop. And I even thought, why am I saying baby when I know the name of the baby?
Right.
It was a long name though, so maybe baby was easier for me to say, but it really assisted me to focus. So I thought that was interesting to look at it in relationship to a chant that maybe was a prayer, maybe it was a mantra to me or something. I'm not even sure, or an affirmation. Even I don't know, but
Right.
they can come in any of those ways. A chant doesn't have to look exactly the same for every person. The whole principle though is that it's repetitive and sort of a lot of people consider it sing song sort of sounding,
Mhm.
and that way it can be anything, that it can be spiritual, it can just be just something that a person uses to focus or anything like that. It covers all the gamut, and I guess I've always looked at it as a spiritual practice.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be though, according to what I was looking at. And but it's been around as most things in Eastern traditions for I don't even know how long. but what's funny is in the West, we turned our backs on a lot of Eastern traditions, but now we're finding them, air quotes, finding
Right.
them.
Right.
And it's like, oh, this new thing. No, it's been around for forever, as far as we know. But it's been strong, especially in India. And it's closely associated with using mantras. Now, what do you know about mantras? Do you have any
I
ideas or
mean,
thoughts on them?
I know that they're something that you say over and over. Uh, Usually, I think to make a change in yourself.
Hmm.
Uh, so it's just kind of something that it's say it till you are it, fake it till you make it type thing.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. And as we talked about, one of the most known from India is the Om mantra,
Uh-huh.
and it's considered the sound of the universe.
Hmm.
Which, when I read that, I got chills. It's like, oh, I felt I felt that when I used the Om repeatedly. At first,
Uh,
to me at least, chanting felt sort of silly. It's like,
uh-huh.
what are we doing? But the more I just released the fact that it felt silly to start, the more I felt it, the more it felt like it came from my center. And I really liked that about it. And being reminded again about the chanting, like I said, was a fun reminder. And listening to the chanting that was going on right before we started was really awesome for me. And it can be used, as we said, in any type of different ways. And also, I was looking at it and it said that in Christianity and Islam, there's a really big tradition in chanting. Um, and sometimes there's music associated with it, but most often it's completely just voices. And when in Islam, when they recite the Quran, have you ever heard that? Someone reciting the
Uh-huh.
Quran?
I have.
Quran, I mean.
Yep.
And it is very melodic.
Hmm.
And what I've noticed when people are chanting, it sounds so beautiful. And people who are chanting don't necessarily have the most amazing voices. And but it still sounds just beautiful to me. And maybe it's just because it's that connection, or maybe it's because of the significance or something like that to the person, that it sounds beautiful because it still feels like it's coming from their heart. Whether I believe necessarily in what they're chanting about or
Sure.
whatever, doesn't matter, but the fact that it's coming from their heart feels important to me. So chanting is also in used in a lot of non-religious settings.
Well, I thought of one that actually uh, just was like, oh yeah, and that is when soldiers march. Often they'll
Hmm.
say left, 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 right, left, left. And that's a chant,
Hmm.
frankly.
It,
You
it
know.
is. And That's funny because it's one of the things that I read about, that they talked about that sort of chanting, and also in sports where athletes will use chants to motivate themselves
Mhm. Mhm.
and and motivate each other and build team spirit. And that's kind of that chant in the military too, because they're all working to a purpose. And
Uh-huh.
of course it's useful because people will know, oh, left, right, okay.
Right,
which
right.
which people do have different lefts and different rights, right? And we know how, no,
Exactly.
the other left, the other right. And I know I've used that a lot in my life, going, oh, correct. Because I'm left handed. So I often start with my left when everybody else is starting with the
Uh-huh.
right. So that sort of chant is quite useful to me. Or how many times have you chanted to yourself, lefty loosey, righty tighty?
Right?
That's the
Yeah.
that's an adult chant anyway, at least for everybody I know, so we can
Yeah.
remember which way things are supposed to go. It is a powerful tool to enhance the concentration and relaxation for people. So chanting has become popular over, I'd say I've heard about chanting most of my life. Have you?
Yeah. I mean, well, like I said, maybe around 12 when I saw the monkeys do it is when I really started to know about it. So that's
Yeah.
still most of my life. I'm 48, so 36 years of my life, sure.
That seems like a lot of it. And why not? Why not? So there have been some studies, and I was looking at a site that I've used before for some research, which I've really enjoyed. And it's an organization called Keen, and it talks about a complete guide to chanting. And one of the things that they said is that chanting has been studied, like I say, for a long time, and it may have many benefits for the mind, body, and spirit. One is stress reduction. They noticed that this calming, I feel like it looks a little bit like stemming,
Stimming, stimming,
um,
clapping.
yeah, yeah. When people use stimming activities, whether they're vocal or physical, to calm themselves, and
Hmm.
chanting, people who do the vocal methods will say the same thing a lot of times over and over again, either
Hmm.
out loud or in their minds. And
Hmm.
it can reduce those stressful thoughts and triggers and provide a relaxation response. Have
Hmm.
you seen your kids using those sorts of things to do this, that?
Torn whistles. I don't really think that I've been exposed to any of them chanting, mostly, but I do know that torn whistles a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'd say, well, they probably don't whistle as much when they're in classes in school, but I'd say that just on a normal day when there is no school, they're whistling at least 50% of the day that they're awake.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, so
Yeah. So I feel like that could fall into that sort of category for stress reduction,
yeah,
and
yeah.
maybe even improving concentration for them. And when a person does these sorts of things, it can reduce the level of cortisol, and that will, on its own, start to bring in some calmness and tranquility. And the improved concentration, um, I don't know if I've used it that way exactly, but it can assist to train the mind to stay attentive and present in the activity. I feel like a lot of these things can work with people who have things like ADHD or other kinds of concentration issues, where they can have that kind of going on even in the background, because I know a lot of us with ADHD have a lot of background stuff going on. And if we can focus that background stuff, I feel like it can assist with the things that we're actually doing. And sometimes I'll use the concentration background things as a music or a song, or even a TV show that I've seen 100 times, just having that part of my brain over here,
Hmm.
just doing something else. And so
I
that can
think I've
improve concentration.
I think I've told you on the podcast about my upstairs and downstairs shows, right? So upstairs shows in my house, my bedroom's upstairs and my office is downstairs. And
Uh-huh.
so my upstairs shows are where I have to concentrate and pay attention because I've never seen it before and I want to know what's going on. My downstairs shows are on my third monitor, and it's something I've seen a billion times, and it's just on so that there's something going on that's not distracting, right? But it's
Hmm.
fulfilling whatever I need with that chat or chitter chatter. So yeah, Casey, one of my employees, teases me all the time and about my upstairs shows and my downstairs shows. but she's really good at when she makes recommendations now, she will say, "I got a recommended downstairs show for you," or "I got a recommended upstairs show for you," which I think is really
That's
funny.
hilarious. That is really funny. And again, even though it's not necessarily a monotone, that can be sort of that concentration or focal
Yeah.
point for us. And my partner Max would come in the office when I had stuff on in the background and say, "How can you be writing a report when you're listening to this?" And I said, "Because that takes that part of my mind and puts it someplace else, and it can really make a difference." And also, chanting has been put together has been shown, I mean, to increase well-being because of bringing that calmness and emotional state to more of a I don't want to say middle, but it can bring positive emotions and show gratitude and improve moods. And many, especially if a person uses a mantra and affirmations, they can bring in the feelings of love, peace, and happiness. And I know that when I have used the affirmations or when I've used them for myself or in practice, I'll recommend the person says it 3 times and then takes a deep breath, and that would just be the same thing, but for a longer period of time. Now, do you think you could do any of these mantras for a long period of time, or how long do you think you could?
Me? No, I think I could do a mantra for probably 45 seconds.
Excellent. And it could make a difference even at that point, because it doesn't say a mantra has to be 60 seconds long to make a difference.
Sure.
Because how would we know? Although I do think there are some people that believe the longer a person can do it, the more they can move into that other sort of realm of peace and calm. But just to change focus, I think could really assist.
Yeah, I know another mantra that I could do longer than that. That's the one where you talk into a fan and you go, I know. I could do that longer.
Excellent. That seems really good. I have never done that.
You've never
I
talked into a fan?
I haven't.
Oh
I
my gosh.
haven't.
I'm gonna
And
do it for real.
I'm sure I was taught as a child, don't go near a fan or it'll cut whatever off. So I'm
Okay,
sure I
let's
thought
see
my
here.
lips would be ripped off or something.
Hopefully my microphone can pick it up because it is meant to not pick this stuff up. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Ah!
I could hear a little bit about that, but our listeners, if this were a video, this would have been really entertaining. For the listening audience, Crystal took her microphone and was leaning over completely and putting her face into a fan. It was awesome.
A big floor
So
fan.
it was a floor fan. Okay, I couldn't tell where it came from if you were lifting or leaning. That's awesome. Well, see, that made us both feel better, didn't it?
Yes, I feel a lot better.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Well, so enhanced emotional well being has just been demonstrated. And as far as the mantras are concerned, I feel like the longest I've ever done one was with the groups of doing Om. And we probably did it for 2 or 3 minutes.
Uh-huh.
And at first, it felt like forever.
Uh-huh.
But then, like I said, the first time I did it, I felt really silly.
Hmm.
But as it came into the group and as we all engaged more, I just really felt that it was transformational. And when I was talking to my partner, Max, who actually recommended this, he said, "Do you think that when you do your drums, that's chanting?"
Hmm.
While I'm not using my voice, my physical voice, I feel like it really can feel like a chant because it's that repetitive
Hmm.
sort of sound. Sometimes I'll do a really repetitive sound for a longer period of time. A lot of times I'll do one sound and then move to another and then back and forth and like that. So as I was thinking about it with in relationship to the drums, I think that could actually fall into that category, but it may go more into the music part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and people have used these things for, like I said, sound therapy and connection and stuff like that.
Well, I'm sure a
So,
lot of chants have also been made into music, have been put to music. Um,
yeah.
I know there's a band called MC Yogi, and they're great. I mean, I just think they're great. But they have a song that a lot of the I don't know the structure of songs. Sorry, y'all, but
Mhm.
the leading in parts are a chant that is. I have to remember it. It's Onavash. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. It's like that. And so that's a
Mhm.
chant that they've put to music, and it's in the background kind of, but they don't actually sing over it. So it's hard to explain because I don't know song anatomy. But um, so that's another thing that makes the chants and chanting make me think about. As a matter of fact, right along the same right along the same way, you know, in the United States, we have the Pledge of Allegiance, which is a chant, right?
That's true.
And
That
so,
is kind.
yeah, and that's been put to music, and particularly often put to music for children to be able to remember it. And it's interesting how when we stop to think about it and actually look around ourselves and around, our life, where we are actually using chanting in some way or another,
That's
right?
true. So when I was looking at chanting and all the benefits it sounds like it can have, I even saw on a page from the National Institute of Health where they did some studies on people who were doing chanting. They were pretty small studies, so are they scientifically significant? Probably not, but it was interesting information that literally everyone reported feeling better, especially immediately after chanting. So they noticed, I think it was a 2016 study of soldiers with post traumatic stress.
Hmm.
They were able to chant and feel better. And it's hard for people who have post traumatic stress, especially soldiers, to find something that can work. And maybe that goes back to the chanting that they do when they do their workouts.
Yeah,
When I was looking at it and seeing that it could be really significant, I thought, are there rules to chanting? I mean, are there rules?
I
Don't
don't know.
know. But I don't know if these are rules particularly, but I did see some some ideas through this keen organization on how to chant. And I think we as people like to make things as complicated as possible,
Naturally.
but chanting chanting is actually as easy as it sounds. You choose your chant. Do I want to say an affirmation? Do I want to build a mantra? Do I just want to make a sound? For me, I've noticed that having a specific word I say is better than a sound because it's a little easier for me not to get distracted.
Mm,
And even if the word is om, which
sure.
also still means a great deal to me, that word particularly. So you do it. You pick a sound that resonates with you for whatever reason. Do you have a sound? Was it the chant maybe that you were just talking about, or is there a sound that you felt like you could resonate with, Crystal?
Um, that's a great question. I hate when people say that actually because they oversay it.
That's a
That's
great
that's
question.
a that's an okay question.
It's mediocre, but I'll answer it just because.
um, I do like Om. I do like um. Gosh, I've never really thought about it. Like if I could choose my own chant, because I've always kind of just been guided um, by others. Uh, so I guess the answer is no.
Well, thank you for your answer to my great question. So, if that's the case, just do the om, choose whatever you'd like.
Yeah,
You could say pickles all day long if that means something to you. It doesn't matter what it is, but to choose
maybe it's
something
the
that,
F word.
well, and that could be. And if that works for you, then something that aligns with your intention. What is your
Oh.
intention? And the intention can be really whatever. Most people would want an intention that is healing for them potentially,
Sure.
or bringing them peace or some sort of spiritual growth. That's where most people will use this. You may do something different. Everyone might use it differently. Although your chant might be for setting a spell or something for someone, I don't know. Excuse me. But when we do our chant, it's best usually to find a quiet space, partially because I feel like it gives an opportunity to really focus. Sometimes quiet spaces, though, are harder for people to focus.
Yeah.
And I know people, especially with ADHD and other things that are focal related, can have some trouble focusing. So maybe quiet is best, maybe it's not. But in most people, quiet space is better. And it can be a calm environment, a beautiful environment, whatever you like, or just in your own bathroom and have the resonance of the walls or something, whatever
Sure.
fits for a person. And that's what I like about a lot of these things is it gets to be what works for you. I'm not going to tell you, oh, you can't use that word. That's a
Yeah.
dumb word. What are you
Right.
talking about? What's wrong with you? That obviously wouldn't be very nice for one, but it doesn't help me if my word or my chant does not resonate with me. I'm
Right.
just saying stuff.
Right.
And it's nice to find a comfortable seated position, usually. A lot of people want to be seated and instead of lying down, because when a person lies down, they often just fall asleep, which can be good.
Right.
If
Right.
chanting is what it takes for me to fall asleep, I listen to tones, which is similar to a chant, and if that's what helps me fall asleep, then maybe that is my purpose that time, sleeping.
Right.
Maybe my
Right.
chant will be rest, rest, something
Right.
like that. But if a person wants to stay awake, it's usually best to sit and and just relax that way. Some people may want to stand. I don't find standing particularly restful, but maybe if I'm doing something, maybe that's where it comes into the sports thing or the soldier thing that we were talking
Sure.
about is they are standing and have their spine straight, good posture. That will trigger sort of a different community feeling maybe,
Right.
or another kind of calm. And then just begin. And sometimes it helps to close the eyes, take a deep breath just to center, and then start the chanting. You can do it out loud. You can do it very loudly. You can softly or even silently in your mind. Again, whatever resonates with you as a person for your comfort level. Some people, especially when they begin, if their family or people are around, they may want to do it silently just because maybe they feel uncomfortable with people knowing that they're chanting.
Sure.
Not like this is a dirty secret, but sometimes it can feel weird if other people don't support it,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
You
I
were
was
going to
just
say
say
something?
one of the things that I think of that if you could find a place like this and if you had permission, or if it was a public place, it's always fun to do chanting in places with good acoustics, somewhere
Mm-hmm.
where you might have it bounce back at you, or you might have it, um, you know, uh, repeat like a said like a yawn, not like a yawn, like an echo, or
Echo.
stuff like that. Just play, play with some acoustics, and you could even do that, I guess, in your own home if you know how to change the acoustics in spaces. But
Mm-hmm.
I know that that's something that really brings me a lot of joy is just
Mm-hmm.
tricky and interesting acoustics.
Yeah, and that's where a bathroom can be good because bathroom acoustics are almost always better than some of the others, mostly because it's a smaller space with some hard surfaces and stuff in
Right.
it.
Right.
And so that can be nice. There are places I've been in Utah, especially where there's tunnels that people will go to sing or
Yeah.
do mantras in that are super
Yeah.
fun. And even someone like myself who isn't a pretty amazing singer, it's still really cool to hear the voices. Excuse me, the voices echo
Mm.
through the sound, and it can be pretty impactful. And we've talked about how all of us are sound and frequencies. So those frequencies make sense to me that the chanting frequency can shift things for me. And the we'll talk in a few minutes about the frequencies for or the chants for the chakras, which
Mm.
are I think a lot of fun too. The important thing with chanting is to maintain a rhythm. That's the thing that they believe brings the peace and the calm to people is that rhythm. And
Right.
that's one reason while people do use longer phrases and things, most people use one or two words to just really maintain that focus. And then also focusing and concentrating on the sound so that other chatter that we tend to have will fade in the background is just focusing on that sound.
Hmm.
And then they say continued for a set period. It's good to do a they say this group, the Keen group says continue for this predetermined period, even if you're really not totally feeling it at first.
Hmm.
And they say, this made me kind of chuckle, especially after asking you how long you could do it. It says, you can start with a short session of 5 to 10 minutes and and gradually increase the duration as you become more comfortable with the practice.
Wow.
And maybe 45 seconds is all you'll ever do, and that's
Yeah.
okay. Or you'll never do chanting maybe. I it doesn't You have lots and lots of tools, you Crystal, and we all as a population of yous have a lot of different tools. So if this doesn't resonate, if chanting doesn't resonate, then for heaven's sakes, don't force it. It's kind
Mhm.
of like when we've talked about meditation in people with or without attention concerns. It can feel like a big task. And one of the things I always like to invite our audience to know is that we're just talking about things that people do. We don't mean that you have to do it and you have to do it a certain way, because our goal is certainly to bring love and light to you and explore these things that can feel really mystic, and chanting to me is one of those things. And if doing it is working for you, great. If it isn't, that's fine. And if you want to start with 5 to 10 minutes or 45 seconds, whatever works for you, just do that, what is comfortable. And they have found that people who start with a shorter duration of time and then build up can have more positive effects from the chanting. And so that's something to consider. And if it works, again, great. And if it doesn't, they also talk about reflecting how it felt. What was the experience like? How may I do it differently or something like that? And many people will end a chant with some sort of gratitude statement. Sometimes they'll do the namaste, sometimes they'll just say thankful words either out loud or to themselves. And the research has shown that when people chant regularly, whether it's daily or just regular every third Wednesday, whatever a
Sure.
person finds is regular, it can actually assist them more than just one time every 6 years or something like that. I made up the 6 year thing, but but making it a habit, like any type of habit, the more people do it, the easier it is to bring into their lives. So if a person listening, one of our listeners wants to develop a chanting program, this is the thing that is recommended by several sites I was looking at. And this Keen group I was talking about is one that had these specifics ideas. And we've talked a little bit about the different types of chants. They can be mantras, affirmations, and some people consider religious hymns a chant. um, I would think that not a whole hymn, because that, but maybe just that whole long thing with the melodic sounds. However, most people believe that chants, as I mentioned before, are not associated with music. They can be musical, but they're not usually associated with a music behind them. And there's something that I thought was really interesting, and I am very likely saying this incorrectly, but this is the one that goes with the chakras, and it's called bija mantra. I may very well be saying that incorrectly, but that's how I saw it. And these chants are believed to help balance and activate the energy centers. So the root chakra is lam, lam. So it just goes lam, lam, lam. And then the second chakra is called vam with a V, VAM, so VAM. And then solar plexus is RAM. Heart chakra is YAM. Throat chakra is HAM. Third eye chakra is OM. And the crown chakra, OM, which I thought was interesting that both were the same. But I feel like once a person has cleared the lower chakras, the more what people consider uh, higher chakras, the third eye and the crown, having Om makes sense to me, really, because that's connecting the universe to the person and the person to the universe in many ways of believing. Have you ever heard these sorts of connected chakra mantras?
I have not. I have
I
not
have
heard.
I haven't either, except for, of course, the Om, which we've already talked about. And they have words that people will use with it as well, but I haven't even any interest in pronouncing those incorrectly for everyone. But some people will do each chakra mantra for a period of time and then do the next one. Some people will do them in connection, in sequence, and it just depends on how the person wants to approach it. But those 7 primary chakras are the ones that are addressed. And I really thought that sounded like a really nice way of doing a chant. One thing that's really amazing about chanting is that it's very accessible. Now, there are some people that aren't able to speak, of course, or hear, but the vibration is part of what the chanting will do. So I feel like someone who can't hear may still feel the vibration of the chant and feel a benefit from it. And even most people who can't hear can make some sounds. So that vibration or that continuity could be something that brings them the peace that other people will get from saying the mantra or the chant. And this ancient practice, like I say, can be just brought. I almost always have my voice, and I can bring it to myself anytime, or to a group or a practice anytime I'd like to. So I was also looking at, during my research, I saw a ABC News, a report of a ABC News show that was of someone who is from Australia, and her name is Gemma Perry, and she just happened to be interviewed. I didn't look to see why particularly it was she was chosen, but I do know that she's working on a PhD, and she's looking into chanting among other things. And she said the first time she did her chanting, I mention she's Australian? Um, okay, because she is. Not that it's totally relevant, but there are some studies that talk about Australia. But she was saying she went to a yoga studio and she chanted a phrase 108 times. And she said, I'm not sure how she counted it, because if I'm saying a phrase, I'm not sure I can count it. But
Right.
she was saying she didn't know what was going on. She said it was a really odd experience for her, that she just went into the studio, and she didn't say if she knew it was going to be a chanting thing, but she said, well, I guess she did. She said she tried chanting, and it was in a yoga studio. But she said she didn't know why or know really anything about chanting, but she was suffering from some severe depression. And she realized after she left, even though she didn't understand it or even know what she was supposed to be experiencing, she noticed that her depression improved, and it felt really very therapeutic for her. So she tried it again the next week, and she's been doing it for a decade now, and she is doing her PhD on understanding why this is the case, and to see if it can be explained by science. And she said that she's uh, looked at a few things and have found a few studies that show that chanting is being more widely accepted in the West, and
Mhm.
that, again, as we talked about, that can decrease stress, anxiety, and depressive symptoms. And she said it's possible, in her studies she's still working on why, but it's possible that it just is a physiological and psychological effect, no matter
Mhm.
what a person is chanting. And
Right.
she said it even seems to slow breathing and activate the vagal nerve. And as we talked about with our breathing person, um, that Jana,
Danny.
that she said, what's that?
I said, you, Jana. Yeah.
Yeah. She was talking about how our vagal nerve will be calmed by breath work. And so, again, as I mentioned before, I feel like this is a form of breath work. And as we talked with Jana about, and listeners, if you haven't heard that, the episode on breath work is really amazing. It was a lot of fun to
Really
do.
good. Yep.
And just, I feel like that breathing, however we get to a calming breath, I celebrate because there are so many times in our lives that our breathing is not calm, and it makes a huge difference. And this Miss Perry says that they have evidence of the vagal nerve slowing, with the decreased respirations, heart rate, and even blood pressure going down.
Hmm.
And she's looked into a whole bunch of different types of traditions and styles, and whether it matters if it's silent or vocal. And she has found that it seems to not really matter. And there was a 2016 study by Miss Perry and uh, a couple of Professor Bill Thompson and Dr. Vincent Polito, and they're from a university in Australia, and they were chanting the Om meditation for 10 minutes. And they had done some testing before and a testing after, and they found out it improved attention, positive mood, and also the feeling of social cohesion because they were doing it in the group and everybody who owned together stayed together, right? No, just I that part I made up. Sorry, Dr. Perry.
what
But
what happens in Ohm stays in Ohm.
that's right. And again, sorry, Dr. Perry, but it seems that this is a thing that pretty much everybody can do, and it's free. If
Yeah,
you want to do your own oming, you can do it for free. You probably can go to classes, but there's no reason to. It's just something that a
right.
person can do to focus on improving their wellness and mental health. Another study published in the American Journal of Psychiatry in 2018 found that this was what I was talking about with the soldiers. They're calling it mantram, so it's a mantra with men, and they used it in repetitive therapy with these soldiers, and it involves silently repeating a spiritually related word or phrase. And they chose spiritually related, and every person could choose their own spiritually related word, so it could be anything. They didn't do a list of the name of the words, but they really found it very beneficial for the post traumatic stress military folks. And I feel like sometimes maybe it needed to be silent because they could do it when they were feeling that increase in stress or the panic responses and things like that that happen with PTSD.
Uh-huh.
And a study posted in a paper called Federal Practitioner, which I believe is an Australian uh, publication, and this would have been in 2019, concluded that similar practices such as mindfulness, meditation, and yoga would aid healthcare workers with small to moderate improvements in their emotional exhaustion. And this, of course, was during the height of the COVID time,
Hmm.
and it really seemed to be one of the things that helped. And also they could do it while they were in working situations where they were really super stressed out.
Right.
They also have done there have been some studies that show that the chanting can increase the flow to the brain, and it may have some connection with slowing deterioration in Alzheimer's patients.
Mm.
And as many people know, Alzheimer's, when people are affected, they lose their current memories, but somehow these older memories or songs or things are are tools that can bring people back to orientation. And I saw a, a little video snip, and I can't remember what it was for, but this man was playing his wife and his favorite song. And every time he played it, his wife would come back to him and say, "Hi, honey. Oh, I've missed you. What are you doing?" sort of things. But when the song would stop, she'd move right back into her Alzheimer's state,
Mhm.
which is fascinating to me that the brain can do that. So maybe bringing some familiar words or phrases to someone in an Alzheimer's condition may bring that cognition back for them. And one of the things that Dr. Perry said is that ancient Egyptians believed that chanting encouraged flooding of the Nile and would yield successful crops. So they would chant for the Nile to flood, to irrigate,
Uh-huh.
and and did it work every year? I can't say, but maybe it couldn't hurt, I imagine. And so anyway, Dr. Perry has said that she's looked in all sorts of cultures and traditions, and it's everywhere. Mantras and chanting have been forever, as far as she can tell. So it's been really fun to look at the idea of chanting and how it might be able to assist a person's well-being. And I really like that it's something a person can do anywhere, anytime, no matter how they feel.
Yes.
So anyway, that's my information on chanting, and I really quite enjoyed it and would like to bring chanting into my life a little bit more.
Yeah, it was very, very cool. Like, thanks for bringing this because it's been fun to just kind of explore it. And, again, I think that most people that are unfamiliar with it, at least when they think of chanting, they do think of, Gregorian monks or um, Tibetan monks or um, I don't even know who else. But yeah, I really like um, I like how you were able to show how expanded it really is.
Yeah, thank you. And I really we have a lot of things that we can buy and play instruments, things like that. And it's nice to have something that just I carry every day. I can do whenever I want,
Yeah,
and I can do it for free. And that is, it seems like there are a lot of things that aren't free that can increase my well being. And I have a lot of those things. I really like that this one is easy and
yeah,
can be done by pretty much anybody that can vocalize
yeah.
or think vocal
Right,
things.
right. You don't
So,
have to lift anything either.
no, I really don't. Although I lift my voice in joy. Dorky, I know. We would love to hear if you have experiences, dear listeners, of chanting or sound practices that you do that might bring you peace and lift your mood. So if you have anything like that, feel free to send us a message.
Yeah, if you wanna correct us, correct us. We'll take it.
We will. And I feel fairly confident that there are lots of things that can be corrected in our podcast, this episode and any of them. However, we do our podcasts with best intentions and do endeavor to bring truthful things to you.
Yes, indeed.
We love to hear from our listeners. To leave a comment, share a story, or ask a question, email us at listeners@mysticdetectives.com. You can also find out about our Patreon and other interesting things going on at our website, mysticdetectives.com. As always, we invite you to subscribe, share, and leave reviews to support the podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Stay curious.
And keep exploring.